And I'm going to describe that by taking us on a quick ride. But first we have to define a term, and that term is Soviet. Most Americans don't know what it means. It's just a nasty term that took the Russian people and the people of the Soviet bloc into economic and oblivion, destroying lives and opportunities. So what is a Soviet? Well, it's a system of councils that report to an apex council and implement a predetermined outcome. The members of a Soviet council are chosen by virtue of their willingness to comply with that outcome and their one-mindedness with a group. Soviets are the operating mechanism of a government-controlled economy, whether it be socialism or government-private partnerships. Well, buckle your seats, because I'm going to take you on a quick ride through the emerged, not emerging, emerged American Soviet. Action Pajaro Valley is where I live, covers this area here, and I can report that Action Pajaro Valley controls all decisions made by the city of Watsonville and the surrounding areas in terms of annexation programs, real estate development activities, school bonding financing. All these decisions are made by the Action Pajaro Council. But Action Pajaro doesn't sit in a vacuum. It's part of a larger Central California system of councils that cover all of our metropolitan areas. And that includes all of Silicon Valley and the entire San Francisco Bay Area. There are 8 of these so-called councils, and under them there are literally hundreds of subsidiary councils that do their dirty work. You see, the goal is to regionalize our governmental process, and this is how it's being done. This comes from Southern California. Vision 2020, one of those terms I talked about earlier, San Fernando Valley. Now, San Fernando Valley has a population of well over 1 million people. Much of it's part of the city of Los Angeles. And you can see down at the bottom, economic development and business assistance. Now, what is some council doing, giving economic development and business assistance to the businesses for? Well, it's to find out who the friendly partners might be, who those compliant business operators are that will join into this new world order. It's about workforce and education investment. Workforce and education? What are they planning to do with our children? It's about livable and sustainable communities. That means no cars. That means rail lines with assigned jobs. And so here's the system for Southern California. And here is a regionalized California. Now, Governor Schwarzenegger has replaced the wildlands chief, Mary Nichols, who came out of the Clinton department, who was implementing all kinds of draconian dynamics on rural California landowners, with a new person who comes right out of one of these councils, and this person's job will be to head up some new department of housing and education and smart growth activities. You see, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. If you're in the political system today, it means you are quietly implementing this United Nations designed program for reordering American society. Here in Maine, I don't have the entire picture of how your system works, but all this stuff is available on the web. And researchers at Freedom 21, Santa Cruz, and other places can take any spot in America and give you the Soviet structure that has begun to take predominance over how our government functions. Now you say, well, how does this really happen? How's it coordinated? Well, this is one of the more curious aspects of the whole thing. ICLEI, or get this name, the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, is a United Nations NGO located in Toronto, Canada. Our county, Santa Cruz County, is listed as, and this is as early as 1997, as one of the premier implementers with ICLEI in coordination. In other words, what ICLEI does is it works with local governments in order to help them institute, and they have a whole bag of tricks the kinds of programs necessary to get them on the sustainable development locomotive. Today, you'll see ICLEI working with communities throughout the United States. But it's also the federal agencies. This is the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA. Now, it's pretty easy to see that they've subscribed to sustainable development. The USDA is all over Santa Cruz County with free money for farmers if they sign up for sustainable development. In other words, if they transfer their management control of their land over to the federal government. So it's a combination of UN, NGOs, and federal agencies that are directing this program. These are the apex councils for the United States. And here are the regional head spots for areas across the country that duplicate what I showed you earlier in California. You see, the political consequence of regionalizing the United States is that we lose our limited constitutional government because the separation of powers between the branches of government and in the federal system itself are obliterated. Representative democracy goes away because it's these councils that are making the decisions, and the politicians simply rubber stamp it without input or knowledge by the people. Checks and balances are eliminated, and the replacement of political boundaries with unelected regional councils, usually based on watersheds or neighborhoods, begins to take preeminence. That was the system of the Soviet Union. There's a UN map showing how they intend to regionalize, ultimately, the Americas. And here it is on a worldwide basis. ICLEI hubs exist all around the world. You see, the real apex is outside the United States. Congressman Ron Paul, who I view as the highest elected constitutionalist in America, said this: "This is not a conservative problem, nor is it a liberal problem. It's a government intrusion problem that comes from both groups, albeit for different reasons. The problems emanate from both camps who champion different programs for different reasons. And the solution will come," he says, "when both groups realize that it is not merely a single-party problem or just a liberal or a conservative problem. The problem is the abandonment of the principles of limited government. The issue is liberty." I tried over the last year or two to picture in my mind and create a pictorial that begins to describe what I think we could call as a dialectic in American politics. What a dialectic is the idea that you establish a thesis and you create its antithesis, understanding that those two concepts will synthesize to what it is you really want the outcome to become. So in looking at the contemporary world and how it is that a global green cartel is coming to America, I've applied these old, nasty philosopher principles. Dialectic is a concept from Marx and Kant and Hegel before that, and see how it plays today. And so I look at the thesis, the right-wing collectivist, the government-private partnership combination, and viewed their antithesis, which is sustainable development, protect the bugs, make the tree huggers happy. And the synthesis of that, amazingly, is Agenda 21. It's stakeholder consensus councils to create a reinvented new form for government. And what happens then is you go through this narrow little digestion track, which Al Gore said, Al Gore obviously a mainstay in the sustainable development movement. He said America must go through a wrenching transformation. Well, that's where it is, as we move into a government-controlled society right on our way to tyranny. So what you have is right-wingers subscribing to smart growth, some right-wingers, those who want to have power and control over others, working with those greenies who are implementing a wildlands project. In order to bring us down to Agenda 21, a regionalized America where property is collectivized